I stood at the observation deck of the horizon, watching Elysium's azure sky streaked with clouds of iridescent purple. The planet was a tapestry of vibrant flora, sprawling across rolling hills that glimmered under the soft sunlight. I felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety bubbling within me. This was our first contact mission, and everything hinged on its success. "Captain Mercer," Dr. Tessa Lynn's voice cut through my thoughts, pulling me away from the mesmerizing view. She stepped onto the deck, her long black hair swaying slightly as she approached. "We're ready to initiate the first landing protocol. You should see this." I turned to her, noting the spark of enthusiasm in her eyes. Tessa had always been passionate about her work, an expert xenobiologist with a knack for understanding alien species. If anyone could make a good impression, it was her. "Let's go, then," I said, pushing off from the railing and following her toward the command center. The atmosphere buzzed with a mix of anticipation and nerves. My crew was fully aware of the significance of this mission. As I entered the command center, I spotted Sergeant Kyle Jennings, our tactical lead, already seated at his console, scanning data from the planet's surface. He glanced up and nodded, a small smile breaking through his otherwise stoic demeanor. "Captain, the atmosphere is breathable, and initial scans indicate a rich biodiversity," he reported, tapping his fingers across the display. "We'll be safe to proceed." "Good to hear," I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "Prepare the shuttle for launch. I want everyone ready in 10. Tessa's excitement was infectious, and I could see her mind racing with possibilities. "Do you think they have animals similar to Earth's?" she asked, her voice laced with curiosity. "What if we encounter a species that can communicate through touch or emotions?" "Let's hope they're friendly enough for a petting zoo," Kyle interjected dryly, earning a chuckle from Tessa. "First contact isn't a petting zoo, Kyle," I reminded him with a grin. "But I'm sure we'll find a way to bond. After all, humans have a unique connection with animals." After a few minutes of preparations, we boarded the shuttle, a sleek vessel designed for atmospheric travel. The rest of the crew settled in, and I took my seat at the helm, heart racing with the thrill of the unknown. With a few deft maneuvers, I guided the shuttle toward the surface of Elysium. The descent was smooth, and as we broke through the cloud layer, I marveled at the kaleidoscope of colors below. Forests of towering trees with vibrant purple leaves surrounded an expansive lake that sparkled like diamonds in the sunlight. "Landing in 3, 2, 1, I announced as I touched down on a grassy knoll just outside a dense forest. The shuttle's engines hummed softly as we powered down. "Welcome to Elysium," I declared, opening the hatch and stepping out onto the soft grass. The air was filled with a mix of floral scents, invigorating and alien, a stark contrast to the sterile environment of our ship. Tessa wasted no time, darting ahead with a gleeful smile. "Look at these flowers. I need samples," she exclaimed, already pulling out her equipment. I chuckled, watching her enthusiasm. Kyle, however, kept a watchful eye on our surroundings, scanning the tree line. "Stay alert, both of you. We don't know what's lurking out there," he reminded us, his military training kicking in. As we began to venture deeper into the lush landscape, I felt a tingle of excitement coursing through me. I knew this mission was more than just establishing contact. It was about showcasing the best of humanity, our compassion, our curiosity, and our unique ability to connect with the animal kingdom. Tessa was busy cataloging samples when we heard a rustling in the bushes. My heart raced. Was it a local creature? Kyle instinctively moved closer to me, eyes narrowed, ready for anything. Suddenly, a large creature burst through the underbrush. Its body was covered in thick, fluffy fur that shimmered in shades of blue and silver. It had big, curious eyes and a wide, playful grin that showed off its elongated teeth. "What the?" I began, but Tessa's delighted gasp interrupted me. "It's beautiful," she exclaimed, kneeling down as the creature approached, its nose twitching in curiosity. "Easy, Tessa," Kyle warned, glancing at me. "Don't scare it away." But Tessa extended her hand slowly, palms facing up. The creature hesitated for a moment, then boldly stepped forward, sniffing her fingers. It licked her hand, and she let out a delighted laugh. "See? It's friendly," Tessa beamed, her joy infectious. I couldn't help but smile at the sight. I cautiously knelt beside her, reaching out a hand. "Hey there, little guy," I said softly. The creature turned its attention to me, tilting its head as if trying to understand. I felt a surge of warmth as it leaned into my palm, inviting me to pet it. "Wow," I said, brushing my fingers through its soft fur. "This feels incredible." It was a strange sensation, almost like petting a living cloud. "Elysian wildlife," Kyle murmured, still wary but unable to hide his curiosity. "I wonder how they'll react to our presence." As we played with the creature, the atmosphere shifted. From the treetops emerged a group of Elysians, tall, slender beings with luminescent skin that shifted colors like a mood ring. They watched us with wide eyes, a mix of fascination and apprehension evident in their expressions. "Stay calm," I whispered to Tessa and Kyle, knowing that first impressions were crucial. "Let's show them we mean no harm." The lead Elysian, who had a vibrant green hue to his skin, stepped forward cautiously. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice melodic yet firm. "I'm Captain Alex Mercer of the United Earth Alliance," I said, trying to sound as diplomatic as possible. "We come in peace to learn about your world and share our own experiences." The Elysian tilted his head, glancing at the creature now nuzzling against Tessa. You touch it?" he asked, disbelief creeping into his tone. "You bond with it?" Tessa nodded eagerly, her voice full of enthusiasm. "Yes, humans have a deep connection with animals. We believe in nurturing and understanding them." She gestured to the creature, which was now rolling on its back, begging for more pets. "This is a Lemurian. Isn't it adorable?" The Elysian's expression shifted from confusion to intrigue. "Lemurians are rarely touched by our kind. They are wild and free." "Maybe that's the key to understanding each other," I suggested, encouraged by the Elysian's curiosity. "If we can show that we can bond with your creatures, perhaps we can also bond with your people." "Bond?" the Elysian echoed, his color shifting to a deep blue, a sign of contemplation. "It is unusual, but I am Zion, leader of my people. We must learn more of you." As Zion's curiosity grew, the atmosphere around us began to shift. The other Elysians, previously hesitant, stepped forward, intrigued by the scene before them. I could see their skepticism beginning to wane, replaced by fascination. "We would like to demonstrate our relationship with the Lemurians," Tessa suggested, her scientific mind already racing with ideas. "If you'd like, we can show you how we interact with them. It might help ease your concerns." Zion nodded slowly. "We will observe. Show us your ways." As Tessa began explaining her research while gently handling the Lemurian, I took a step back, allowing her to shine. I felt a surge of pride watching her flourish, her passion for animals and understanding of biology shining through. "Humans can pet anything," one of the observing Elysians murmured, his eyes wide with astonishment. "I think they're just as amazed as we are," Kyle remarked quietly, a hint of a smile creeping onto his face. This could work. Tessa continued demonstrating how to gain the Lemurian's trust, leading it through simple commands and playful interactions. The Elysians watched intently, their colorful skin shifting with their emotions. Suddenly, the Lemurian darted off toward the edge of the clearing, chasing after a butterfly. Tessa laughed, and I couldn't help but join her, the joy infectious. But then, an unexpected sound echoed through the trees, a low growl that sent a chill down my spine. My instincts kicked in, and I turned to see the Elysians reacting with alarm. "What was that?" I demanded, glancing at Kyle. "Stay close," Kyle ordered, shifting into a defensive stance, his eyes scanning the tree line. Zion raised his hand, signaling for calm. "Stay here," he said, a hint of authority in his tone. The Elysians formed a protective circle, and we remained at the center, our bond with the Lemurian momentarily forgotten as we focused on the new threat. From the shadows emerged a larger creature, its fur bristling and its teeth bared. It looked like a cross between a wolf and a bear, a primal force of nature. The Lumerian, sensing danger, whined and retreated to Tessa's side. "Easy, everyone," I said, raising my hands. "We don't want to provoke it." Zion stepped forward, his expression resolute. "We will defend ourselves. Stay back," he commanded the Elysians, who poised themselves, ready for a fight. As the creature advanced, a plan formed in my mind. "Wait!" I shouted, rushing forward despite Kyle's warning, grasping my arm. "We don't need to fight. If we show it, we mean no harm." Before I could finish, the creature lunged at me, jaws snapping. I barely managed to sidestep, adrenaline surging as I scrambled backward. "Captain!" Kyle shouted, but Tessa was already moving. She stepped between me and the creature, her voice steady. "Calm. We mean no harm." She extended her arms, palms out, as if trying to project peace. The creature paused, its growl fading as it sniffed the air. Tessa's bravery caught me off guard. "Just like we did with the Lumerian," she said, glancing back at me, her eyes shining with determination. Realizing that she was right, I joined her. "That's it. Let it know we're not a threat," I shouted, taking a deep breath and lowering my stance. The creature hesitated, uncertainty evident in its stance. The Elysians watched in rapt attention, their expressions shifting from fear to curiosity. In a moment of inspiration, I glanced at the Lumerian, now hiding behind Tessa's legs. "Tessa, can you call the Lumerian?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Right," she said, kneeling down and cooing softly. "Come here, buddy. Show this creature that we're friends." The Lumerian emerged, cautiously approaching the creature. It sniffed the air, its fluffy body quivering. The wild creature watched, curiosity sparking in its eyes. With bated breath, I saw the Lumerian move closer, its body language relaxed. The tension in the clearing began to dissipate as the larger creature hesitated, tilting its head. "Stay calm, everyone," I whispered, hoping the creature would understand our intentions. The Lumerian stepped up and nudged the larger creature, as if offering an olive branch. To my astonishment, the wild creature responded, sniffing the Lumerian before letting out a low rumble, a sound that resembled a purr. Tessa beamed, her excitement palpable. "Look, they're communicating." The Elysians exchanged glances, their colors shifting from apprehension to awe. Zion stepped closer, fascinated. "They can speak without words." With that small act of bravery, the atmosphere shifted. The wild creature, sensing the calm energy of the Lumerian, relaxed, dropping its defensive posture. It stepped back, intrigued, no longer a threat, but an ally. I turned to Tessa, a grin spreading across my face. "You did it. You showed them." Zion nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "You are truly remarkable, humans. Your ability to connect with creatures is unusual." Kyle finally let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Guess we've made quite the first impression," he said, a hint of pride in his voice. As we stood there, the Lumerian and the larger creature now sharing a moment of curiosity, I couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. This was only the beginning. Hours passed as we continued to interact with the creatures, demonstrating our bond with the Lumerians while the Elysians shared their own stories and legends. The atmosphere shifted from skepticism to camaraderie, a mutual understanding blossoming in the space between us. By the time the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, I felt a warmth in my heart. The Elysians had invited us to share their evening meal, and as we sat together under the stars, I realized that our journey on Elysium was just beginning. "Tomorrow, we will introduce you to more of our creatures," Zion said, his skin glowing with excitement. "There is much to learn from one another." I nodded, feeling the thrill of what lay ahead. I looked forward to it. As I glanced at Tessa and Kyle, their faces lit with joy, I understood that we had begun to forge a connection that transcended species. Our ability to bond with animals was only the start. We were on the brink of something incredible, an alliance built on understanding and trust. That night, as I lay in my bunk aboard the Horizon, I couldn't shake the feeling of anticipation. Tomorrow, we would dive deeper into this new world, exploring the wonders of Elysium, and perhaps redefining what it meant to be human. Little did I know, the challenges ahead would test our resolve and shape the future of our alliance in ways we could never have imagined. The sunrise over Elysium was a breathtaking spectacle, the sky painted in vibrant shades of pink and gold. I stood at the observation deck of the horizon, still buzzing from the revelations of our first contact with the Elysians. We had made significant strides toward a relationship with Zion and his people, but the warmth of that success was quickly overshadowed by new concerns. "Captain, we need to talk," Kyle said, his voice cutting through my reverie. He entered the deck with a serious expression, his brows furrowed. "I just got word from Zion. There's a faction among the Elysians who are adamantly opposed to us." My heart sank. "What do they want?" "They view us as a threat," Kyle replied, running a hand through his hair. "They believe our presence endangers their wildlife and ecosystems." Tessa appeared beside me, her face a mixture of determination and concern. "That can't happen. We've made so much progress. We need to find a way to communicate with them, to show them that we're not a threat." I nodded, considering the implications. We should explore their territory, learn more about this faction, and see if we can change their minds. If they feel threatened, we won't get anywhere. Tessa's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I'd love to see more of Elysium's wildlife. If we can demonstrate our ability to coexist peacefully with their creatures, maybe we can win them over." "Let's get a plan together," I said, my resolve hardening. "We'll head into the jungles. Zion can help guide us, but we need to approach this delicately. If this faction is as hostile as we think, we'll need to tread carefully." After gathering supplies and briefing the crew, we prepared for the journey. Zion arrived shortly after, his vibrant skin shimmering with concern. "I have heard the whispers of dissent. I will guide you through the jungles, but you must understand, my people are protective. They do not trust you." "I understand," I replied, meeting his gaze. "But we're here to prove that we can be allies, not enemies." Zion nodded solemnly. "Then we must move quickly. The factions often patrol the borders, and they do not welcome outsiders." As we trekked through the dense jungle, the air grew thick with humidity. Towering trees with bioluminescent foliage loomed above us, their leaves rustling softly in the breeze. The sounds of exotic creatures filled the air, chirps, growls, and the occasional distant roar. I could feel Tessa's excitement as she pointed out various plants, eagerly cataloging samples. "Look at this one," she exclaimed, kneeling beside a vibrant flower that pulsed with light. "It's incredible. I've never seen anything like it." "Just keep your eyes peeled," Kyle said, scanning the shadows. "We don't want to attract unwanted attention." After hours of navigating through the dense foliage, we reached a clearing. "This is the sacred ground of the Elysians," Zion said, gesturing to the area around us. "We must tread carefully." In the center of the clearing stood a massive tree, its trunk wider than our shuttle. Vines coiled around its base, and luminescent creatures flitted about. It was beautiful, but something felt off. The air crackled with tension, and I could sense that we were being watched. Suddenly, a rustle came from the bushes, and a group of Elysians emerged, their skin darkening to a deep shade of red, an indication of aggression. "What are you doing here, Zion?" one of them demanded, stepping forward. "You bring these humans into our territory?" "Ulis," Zion replied, maintaining his composure. "They seek understanding. They do not wish to harm our land." "Understanding," Ulis scoffed. "They will only bring destruction. We must drive them away before it's too late." Tessa stepped forward, her voice steady. "We can prove that we mean no harm. We want to learn from you and share our experiences with your wildlife." The dissenting Elysians exchanged skeptical glances. "You think you can just come here and bond with our creatures?" Ulis said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." "Let us show you," I said, taking a deep breath. "We'll prove our intentions through our actions. We want to help protect Elysium's wildlife, not harm it." As I spoke, I could see the tension in the air thickening. The Elysians were clearly split, and Ulysses' faction was not going to back down easily. I needed to find common ground quickly. "What if we take you to our sanctuary?" Ulysses suggested, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "Let's see how well you fare with our creatures." "We will go," Zion declared, standing firm. "If they are truly peaceful, they will have nothing to fear." After a brief, tense silence, Ulysses reluctantly nodded. "Fine. But if they show any sign of aggression, we will not hesitate to act." As we followed Ulysses and his faction through the jungle, I could sense the palpable distrust among them. They walked with an air of superiority, and every whisper sent ripples of anxiety through the group. I glanced at Tessa, who was focused on her surroundings, a mix of determination and curiosity in her expression. We trekked deeper into the jungle until we arrived at a hidden sanctuary, a breathtaking area surrounded by towering cliffs covered in lush vegetation. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers. This was clearly a place of significance for the Elysians. "This is our refuge," Ulysses said, gesturing to the vibrant landscape. "Here, we protect the creatures that cannot protect themselves." As we entered the sanctuary, I felt a wave of awe wash over me. Creatures of all shapes and sizes roamed freely, some fluttering through the air, others lounging under the shade of enormous ferns. It was a paradise, a living testament to the Elysians' devotion to their wildlife. "Impressive," Kyle muttered, taking in the sight. "But what does this have to do with us?" Ulysses smirked. "Let's see if you can earn the trust of these creatures. If you cannot, then how can we trust you?" Tessa stepped forward, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I want to try. Let's show them what we can do." She knelt down, extending her hand toward a small, fluffy creature with shimmering fur. It hesitated before approaching, sniffing her fingers curiously. The moment was captivating. I watched as Tessa began to connect with the creature, her gentle demeanor working wonders. The Elysians observed closely, their expressions shifting from skepticism to intrigue. Suddenly, a rustle came from the nearby foliage, and a larger creature, unlike anything I had seen before, emerged. Its iridescent skin glimmered in shades of blue and green, and it moved gracefully, almost like liquid. The other creatures around us quieted, sensing the power of this being. "What is that?" I whispered, taking a step back. "That's the Orlaia," Zion said, his eyes wide with admiration. "It is a rare and sacred creature among us. It possesses incredible healing properties." As the Orlaia approached Tessa, a stillness fell over the sanctuary. The creature radiated an aura of tranquility, and Tessa instinctively reached out, allowing it to sniff her hand. "It's beautiful," she murmured, mesmerized. "It can sense emotions," Zion explained. "Perhaps it will be able to gauge your intentions." As the Orlaia touched Tessa's hand with its shimmering tendrils, a warm glow enveloped her. The moment was ethereal, almost surreal. I could see the skepticism melting away in the eyes of Ulysses' faction. "Tessa, this is incredible," I exclaimed, stepping closer. "We could use this knowledge to help both our species." Ulysses' expression shifted from disdain to consideration. "If the Orlaia trusts you, perhaps there is more to you than we initially thought." Tessa remained calm, her focus solely on the Orlaia. "We want to understand your world," she said softly. "We can help protect it, too. Imagine the possibilities of combining our knowledge and resources." The atmosphere in the sanctuary shifted, an undercurrent of hope threading through the tension. Ulysses seemed to ponder her words, his skepticism wavering. "You truly wish to protect our wildlife?" "Yes," Tessa replied, her voice steady. "We have a unique connection with animals on our planet. We believe in fostering those relationships and using our knowledge to benefit them." Before Ulysses could respond, a sudden growl shattered the calm. From the shadows of the sanctuary emerged a pack of creatures, their eyes glinting in the dim light. They were larger than the Orlaia, their features reminiscent of both wolves and jaguars, muscles rippling beneath their sleek fur. "Stay back," Ulysses shouted, moving to protect his faction. "Wait," I yelled. but the creatures were already lunging at us. In an instant, chaos erupted. The Elysians formed a protective barrier around the Oralia, while Kyle positioned himself in front of Tessa, ready to defend. I had to think fast. "Tessa, reach out to the Oralia. Show it your intentions." She nodded, her voice calm amidst the chaos. "Oralia, please, we're friends." To my surprise, the Oralia glowed brightly, a radiant light emanating from its body. The growling pack hesitated, drawn in by the powerful aura. The tension in the air shifted, a wave of energy washing over us. I could hardly believe what I was witnessing. The pack began to calm, their growls fading into soft whines. Tessa took a step forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "It's okay. We mean no harm." Slowly, the leader of the pack approached Tessa, its golden eyes locking onto hers. I held my breath, fearing the worst, but the creature nuzzled her hand, the tension evaporating like mist in the morning sun. The Elysians watched in disbelief. "How did you do that?" Ulyss murmured, awe replacing his earlier hostility. "I don't know," Tessa admitted, her voice soft. "But I think they can sense our intentions." In that moment, something shifted within Ulyss. The flicker of hope in his eyes was unmistakable. "Perhaps we misjudged you." I took a step forward, feeling the weight of the moment. "Together, we can protect Elysium's wildlife. We can show you that humans can be allies, not threats." As the pack settled around us, curiosity replacing hostility, the atmosphere began to change. The Elysian's eyes sparkled with a newfound understanding, and Ulyss's skin shifted from red to a soft shade of blue. "We need to consider this," he said finally, his voice more measured. "If you can truly connect with our creatures, perhaps there is a path forward." Zion nodded, a proud smile on his face. "Together, we can create a bond that protects our world. This is just the beginning." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the sanctuary, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. We had faced hostility, fear, and doubt, but we had also discovered a glimmer of hope, a potential alliance born from our ability to connect with the creatures of Elysium. Yet, as I glanced at Tessa, her face illuminated by the glow of the Oralia, I couldn't shake the feeling that shadows of distrust still lingered. The journey ahead would not be easy, but we were ready to face whatever challenges awaited us. That night, we camped within the sanctuary, a sense of camaraderie weaving through our group. I lay awake, listening to the sounds of the jungle, my thoughts racing. The future of our alliance hung in the balance, and I knew we had to continue proving ourselves. With dawn approaching, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow, we would take the first steps toward a new treaty, one that could change the fate of both humans and Elysians. As the sun rose over Elysium, a vibrant tapestry of colors and sounds filled the air, but beneath the surface, a storm was brewing, one that could tear apart the fragile peace we had fought so hard to build. The day began with a symphony of life. Exotic birds filled the air with melodious calls, while the breeze rustled through the vibrant flora, creating a chorus of whispers. I stood on the observation deck of the horizon, absorbing the beauty around me. Elysium had become more than just a mission. It was a second home, a place of discovery and friendship. "Captain Mercer," Tessa's voice broke my reverie as she hurried toward me, her arms laden with sample containers filled with flora and fauna. "You have to see this. The Elysians are preparing for the festival today. It's incredible." I followed her as she led the way to the central gathering area, excitement bubbling within me. "What kind of festival?" I asked, curious. "It's called the Festival of Unity," Tessa explained, her eyes shining. "It's a celebration of their bond with nature. They invited us to showcase our connection with the Lemurians and other creatures." "Sounds like a fantastic opportunity," I replied, my heart racing with anticipation. "But I can't help but wonder what the Elysians expect from us." As we arrived at the festival grounds, my breath caught in my throat. The area was transformed into a vibrant spectacle. Colorful banners fluttered in the breeze, and stalls were set up, each displaying the intricate crafts of the Elysians. Aromas of delicious food wafted through the air, mingling with the sweet scent of blooming flowers. Zion stood at the center, his vibrant skin glowing in the morning sun, rallying the Elysians with a fervor I had come to respect. "Today, we celebrate our bond with the creatures of this world," he proclaimed, his voice carrying over the crowd. "And we welcome our human friends to demonstrate their unique relationship with nature." The crowd erupted into applause, and I felt a swell of pride. We were no longer mere guests. We were a part of something monumental. As the festivities commenced, Tessa and I began to set up our area, preparing to introduce the Elysians to the wonders of human-animal relationships. Kyle, standing nearby, was deep in conversation with some of the Elysian warriors, discussing security measures for the event. "Things are looking good," I said, glancing at Tessa as she expertly arranged her equipment. "I think this festival could strengthen our ties with the Elysians even further." "Absolutely," she replied, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. "This is a chance to show them how we connect with animals, how we bond, and ultimately, how we can work together to protect them." But as I looked around, I couldn't shake the feeling that not everyone shared our enthusiasm. A small group of Elysians lingered at the edge of the gathering, their expressions filled with resentment. I recognized them as members of the opposing faction, those who viewed our presence as a threat to their traditions. As the day unfolded, the atmosphere became electric with energy, laughter, and joy. However, I remained vigilant, aware that the festival could also be a stage for those who opposed our mission. Hours passed, and just as the sun reached its zenith, the festivities were in full swing. Music filled the air, and the Lemurians frolicked among the Elysians, who marveled at our ability to communicate with the creatures. Suddenly, the cheerful laughter was interrupted by a piercing shriek. My heart raced as I turned to see a small group of wild creatures bursting from the forest, eyes wild with panic. They were not Lemurians but smaller, more feral beings darting past stalls and weaving through the crowd. "What's happening?" I shouted, my instincts kicking in. "Get everyone back." Panic erupted as the creatures darted among the festival goers, scattering the crowd. I spotted Kyle, quickly moving to direct people away from the chaos. "This way, stay calm," he yelled, his military training shining through as he guided them towards safety. "Tessa," I shouted over the din, spotting her crouched beside a frightened Lemurian. "We need to calm them down." "I'm on it," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos around us. I watched as she crouched low, extending her hands toward the wild creatures, trying to coax them with gentle sounds. But the commotion only grew worse. A stall collapsed under the stampede of panicking creatures, and I saw one of the Elysians, an elder, fall to the ground as the chaos unfolded. "Help him!" I shouted, pointing toward the elder. Kyle nodded and rushed into the fray, swiftly helping the elder to his feet and guiding him away from the chaos. As I turned back to Tessa, I noticed the group of dissenters exchanging knowing glances, a smirk evident on their faces. "This is no accident," I murmured, realization dawning on me. "Tessa," I called again, my voice rising above the chaos. "I think someone is sabotaging the festival." "I'm sure of it," she replied, determination flickering in her eyes. "These creatures are reacting to something unnatural." In that moment, clarity struck. "We need to find out what's causing this," I said, urgency gripping my heart. "They won't listen to us unless we can restore order." Kyle rejoined us, breathing heavily but ready for action. "What's the plan?" he asked, scanning the crowd. The chaos was beginning to spiral out of control. "We need to calm the wild creatures," I said, my voice steady. "If Tessa can figure out what's making them panic, we can stop this chaos." "I've been working on techniques to soothe them," Tessa said, her brow furrowed in concentration. "But I need to see them up close." Kyle nodded, a fierce resolve in his eyes. "I'll help guide you. We'll need to move quickly before anyone gets hurt." As we made our way toward the source of the commotion, I could see the wild creatures scattering in all directions. They were small and agile, with bright, bioluminescent markings that pulsed as they darted through the crowd. Tessa's analytical mind was already racing, searching for a way to soothe them. "Look," she said, pointing to a cluster of creatures who seemed to be huddled together. "They're clearly frightened. We just need to approach slowly." "On my mark," Kyle said, positioning himself at the front to create a protective barrier between Tessa and the panicked creatures. "Ready? Go." With careful steps, we advanced toward the huddled creatures, the noise of the festival fading into the background. Tessa crouched down, whispering soothing words as she extended her hands, palms open. "It's okay," she murmured. "We're here to help." As we got closer, I saw one of the creatures shake violently, its luminous markings flickering erratically. The others seemed to mirror its fear, eyes wide and darting. "Something's wrong," Tessa said, her voice rising slightly in pitch. "They're not just afraid. They sense danger." I glanced at Kyle, who was scanning the perimeter for any signs of sabotage. What could be causing this? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the direction of the dissenters, followed by a low growl. My heart sank as I realized the creatures were reacting to a specific threat. Something was making them feel cornered. "Let's move," I shouted, rushing toward the source of the noise with Tessa and Kyle at my side. The dissenters had gathered in a circle, clearly involved in whatever chaos was unfolding. As we approached, I could see two of the dissenters kneeling near a device of some sort, wires sparking and emitting a strange, pulsating hum. "They're controlling the creatures," I yelled, my blood boiling with anger. "Stop them," Kyle commanded, lunging toward the dissenters. Tessa and I followed closely behind, adrenaline coursing through our veins. The dissenters looked up, shock evident on their faces as we charged. "What are you doing?" one of them shouted, scrambling to his feet. "This isn't your fight." "No, it's ours," Kyle retorted, shoving him aside. We had to neutralize this threat quickly. With a swift motion, I lunged for the device, reaching for the wires. "Tessa, what do we do?" "I need to analyze it," she called, pulling out her scanner. "I can't see the full effect until we shut it down." The dissenters were now trying to push us back, but Kyle stood firm, protecting Tessa and me. "Get out of the way," he yelled. "You're ruining everything." As I focused on the device, I felt a surge of determination. "Tessa, you need to give me a signal when you're ready." "Just a moment," she shouted, her eyes glued to the scanner. I could see the tension building as the creatures outside continued to panic, their movements more erratic by the second. "Ready," Tessa finally shouted. "Shut it down." I yanked at the wires, pulling them free from the device. A sudden jolt surged through me, but I held my ground. Sparks flew, and the device sputtered before going silent. The dissenters gasped, their expressions shifting from anger to fear. The creatures outside hesitated, their movements slowing as the chaos began to fade. "Now," I shouted, gesturing for Tessa to move forward. "Let's calm them down." Tessa immediately dropped to her knees again, speaking softly to the nearest creature. "It's okay, we're friends," she said, her voice gentle. "We're not going to hurt you." As I watched, I felt a glimmer of hope. The creature turned its luminous gaze toward Tessa, hesitating. Slowly, it edged closer, and soon, it nuzzled against her hand. The other creatures began to respond, their frantic energy dissipating as they sensed the calming presence of Tessa and the Lumerians. A wave of relief washed over me, knowing we were gaining control. "See?" Tessa said, looking up at me with a smile. "They can feel our intentions." The dissenters, however, were not finished. "You think you've won?" one shouted, retreating with the others. "This isn't over." "We'll be watching," another added, their voices filled with malice as they disappeared into the trees. "I don't think they'll give up easily," Kyle said, his brow furrowed. "We need to strengthen our defenses." As we regrouped with the Elysian leaders, Zion stepped forward, his eyes alight with concern. "What happened?" he asked, looking between us and the remnants of the destroyed device. "We stopped them from sabotaging the festival," I said, catching my breath. "But they'll be back. We need to fortify our defenses." Tessa nodded, still gently coaxing the last of the wild creatures. And I need to analyze the effects of that device. It seemed to heighten their fear response. Zion's expression turned grave. We will not allow them to disrupt our harmony. You have proven your worth today, humans. We will protect you as you protect us. The air hummed with tension, but in that moment, I felt a sense of unity. We were fighting not just for ourselves, but for the future of Elysium. The festival continued despite the earlier chaos, and the warmth of the evening sun painted the sky in brilliant colors. As night fell, we shared stories, laughter, and bonds forged through adversity. I watched Tessa and Kyle interact with the Elysians, admiration shining in their eyes. Kyle had stepped into a leadership role, earning respect among the warriors, while Tessa's determination had shown the scientists that humans possessed something special, an ability to connect with the world around us. As we stood together under the stars, I realized the challenges ahead would only strengthen our alliance. The storm may have gathered, but we were ready to face it, united in our purpose. I looked out at the vast expanse of Elysium, filled with its wonders and mysteries. Whatever came next, I knew we would face it together, embodying the essence of humanity's bond with nature, one that transcended species, cultures, and worlds. The festival may have faced a storm, but we were ready to weather it together. Just when we thought we had found common ground, tragedy struck, and the shadows of doubt crept back into our alliance. Could we truly coexist, or were we destined to tear each other apart? It had been a week since the festival celebrating our newfound friendship with the Elysians. Vibrant memories of laughter, shared stories, and the wonder of Elysium filled my mind as I stood on the observation deck of the horizon. My crew had experienced a genuine connection with the locals, exploring the beauty of their world through the lens of mutual respect and curiosity. "Captain," Tessa said, interrupting my thoughts as she joined me on the deck. Her usually bright expression was dimmed by a shadow of concern. "I need to talk to you about something important." "Sure, Tessa. What's on your mind?" I asked, turning to face her. The slight tremor in her voice made my stomach knot. Tessa was usually the first to express excitement about new discoveries. "It's about the Lemurians," she began, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "I've noticed some troubling behavior among them. They seem restless." I raised an eyebrow. "Restless? How so?" "Well, the population has been changing, and they're becoming less active around the research station. I think something might be affecting their environment." Tessa took a deep breath, determination flooding her features. "I want to investigate further." Before I could respond, Kyle stepped onto the deck, his expression serious. "We need to remain cautious. The festival was a great step, but trust can still be fragile." Tessa shot him an annoyed look. "I'm not suggesting we disregard their feelings, Kyle. I'm concerned about the well-being of the creatures. Which is why we should keep our distance until we understand the cause," Kyle replied, his protective instincts coming to the forefront. "We can't live in fear forever," I interjected, trying to find a balance between them. "Tessa has a point. If we want to foster this alliance, we need to address our concerns openly." Kyle crossed his arms, visibly frustrated. "I just don't want us to let our guards down too much. We've barely established trust." Before we could delve deeper into our discussion, a frantic communication from Zion, the Elysian leader, interrupted us. "Captain Mercer, you must come to the Lemurian habitat immediately." "On my way," I replied, exchanging worried glances with Tessa and Kyle before heading toward the shuttle bay. The atmosphere on Elysium felt charged as we made our way through the lush terrain, the brilliant colors of the landscape dulled by an underlying sense of dread. The vibrant flowers that had danced in the breeze just days before now seemed heavy, as if mourning. As we approached the habitat, a small crowd of Elysians had gathered, their luminescent skin flickering like candle flames. Zion stood at the front, his vibrant hue darkening with distress. "What happened?" I asked, pushing through the crowd until I reached him. "There has been a tragedy," Zion replied, his voice heavy. "One of our rarest Lemurians has been found dead." The world felt as if it had come to a standstill. I exchanged looks with Tessa, her face pale. What do you mean, dead? How? Tessa asked, disbelief coloring her tone. Zion led us to the edge of the habitat, where a small group of Elysians hovered around a lifeless Lemurian. Its once bright fur was now dull, and the playful spirit that had danced in its eyes had vanished. It was discovered this morning, Zion explained, his eyes reflecting grief. We fear it may have been sabotaged, a sign of your kind's true nature. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. That can't be. Don't deny it, human, Zion's voice rose, his colors shifting rapidly in agitation. This creature was a symbol of our trust. If your kind could betray us so easily. No, Tessa shouted, stepping forward. You don't understand. We wouldn't hurt a creature. This is a tragedy for us, too. Her plea cut through the tension, but the Elysians were already dividing into factions. Some were angry, accusing us of foul play, while others stood in shocked silence, grappling with their emotions. Let's not jump to conclusions, I urged, attempting to maintain peace. We need to investigate before pointing fingers. We can find out what really happened. Find out? One of the Elysians scoffed. You think we will trust you again? Your kind's history shows you cannot be trusted. Kyle's posture shifted, his instincts kicking in. This isn't going to end well. We should... Stand down, Kyle, I ordered quietly, keeping my voice steady. We need to figure this out, not escalate the situation. With reluctance, he nodded, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. Tessa knelt beside the Lemurian, her expression shifting from shock to determination. I need to examine the creature. Perhaps I can find evidence of what caused its death. Do you believe it was an accident? Zion asked, his voice lower, almost vulnerable. I won't know until I look closely, Tessa replied, her voice steady. But I assure you, I won't rest until I discover the truth. As she examined the creature, I caught sight of the fear reflected in the eyes of the Elysians. Their trust hung by a thread, and it was up to us to mend that fraying bond. Hours passed as Tessa conducted her examination, her focus unwavering. I kept the Elysians and my crew separated to prevent further escalation, trying to bridge the growing divide. Alex, Kyle muttered as we stood off to the side. What if they're right? What if this was sabotage? We won't know unless we investigate, I replied, my voice firm. I trust Tessa to find the truth. We have to believe in our partnership. Kyle grunted, glancing back at the Elysians. It's easy for them to think we're capable of betrayal. We're not exactly squeaky clean in human history. Trust me, I know. But we're not here to repeat those mistakes, I said, looking him in the eyes. We're building something new. Finally, Tessa stood, a furrow in her brow. It wasn't sabotage, she announced, her voice cutting through the tension. The Lemurian died from natural causes, a rare illness that has affected its population before. Natural causes, Zion echoed, disbelief etched across his features. How can we be sure? I've seen this before in Lemurians during my research. There's a pattern to it. This particular one had been showing signs of distress for a few days before its death, Tessa explained, urgency in her voice. But we need to act quickly. If it spreads, more Lemurians could be at risk. Yet, you expect us to believe you? An Elysian growled, his skin darkening with suspicion. Listen to her, I pleaded, stepping forward. Tessa has dedicated her life to understanding these creatures. We can work together to prevent further loss. It's in all our best interests. Zion hesitated, his uncertainty palpable. But if there are those among you who wish us harm, none of us want that, I interrupted firmly. We all want to protect the Lemurians. We need to come together and face this challenge as allies. Tessa nodded, her voice steady. Let me conduct tests on the other Lemurians. If we can identify the illness, we can treat them before it spreads further. Zion's colors flickered as he processed our words. If you truly wish to help, you may test the others, but understand that our people will be watching closely. As Tessa and I began setting up for further examinations, Kyle remained on edge. "This isn't going to work," he muttered. "They still think we're capable of betrayal." "That's why we need to prove them wrong," I replied, my resolve strengthening. "We'll show them we can work together." Over the next few days, Tessa and her team worked tirelessly to study the remaining Lumerians. Every finding was documented, and I did my best to facilitate communication between our crew and the Elysians. Kyle's instincts often led him to mistrust, but slowly he began to recognize the efforts being made on both sides. He saw Tessa bonding with her Elysian counterparts, exchanging ideas and working side by side, building bridges where there had once been walls. But as tensions simmered, another tragedy struck. While testing a group of Lumerians, Tessa found another creature exhibiting signs of illness, causing an uproar among the Elysians. "The sickness is spreading," one of the Elysians shouted, eyes wild with fear. "You humans have brought this upon us." "No," Tessa insisted, shaking her head vehemently. "We didn't cause this. We're trying to help. This is a natural occurrence." "Is it?" Zion asked, his voice low and challenging. "You say it is natural, yet our trust in you has been shattered. How can we be sure you're not hiding something?" "Zion," I interjected, stepping forward. "We're all scared, but finger-pointing won't solve anything. We need to unite and confront this disease together." He met my gaze, and for a moment, I could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. "And if your people are the cause, what then?" "Then we find a way to fix it," I replied firmly. "We owe it to the Lumerians, to the creatures of this world. This alliance means nothing if we're unable to trust each other." The Elysian leaders gathered, their colors shifting in confusion. Tessa stepped forward, determination radiating from her. "We need to collect samples from the other Lumerians to identify the pathogen. If we work together, we can prevent further loss." A tense silence enveloped us as Zion deliberated. Finally, he turned to me, his expression softening. "You ask for trust. Then let us act like allies and work together." As our teams began collaborating, I could feel a glimmer of hope returning. Days turned into a blur of tests, analyses, and discussions. Tessa's relentless spirit pushed us forward, fostering connections with the Elysians. With each finding, we shared knowledge, striving for a solution to save the Lumerians. Tessa and Zion grew closer, their conversations deepening as they delved into the intricacies of our respective sciences. "I didn't expect you to be so passionate about these creatures," Zion admitted one afternoon, watching Tessa work. "I've devoted my life to understanding them," she replied, her voice warm. "They deserve to be protected, just like any other living being." Zion nodded slowly, his skin illuminating with respect. "You remind me of my people's bond with nature. We may be different, but our love for these creatures unites us." But as we reached the final stages of our investigation, a grim realization settled upon us. The pathogen was more complex than we anticipated, revealing connections to environmental shifts on Elysium. "The creatures are suffering because their habitat is changing," Tessa explained, her brow furrowing as she analyzed the data. "If we don't act quickly, this will affect the entire ecosystem." "Then we must rally our people to take action," Zion declared, his tone resolute. "We cannot allow fear to tear us apart. We will show our people that we can stand united against this threat." As we prepared to present our findings, tensions flared once more. Some Elysians were still adamant that we were the cause of their troubles, while others urged a more open-minded approach. The day of our presentation arrived, and the air was thick with uncertainty. Zion gathered his people, while I stood beside Tessa, our hearts racing. "Today, we stand at a crossroads," I began, addressing both our crew and the Elysians. "We have faced tragedy, and in that darkness, we found the strength to come together. But the fight is not over. We must work as one to save the Lumerians and protect this world." The crowd murmured, uncertain glances exchanged. Tessa stepped forward, her voice steady. "The sickness among the Lumerians stems from environmental changes we've witnessed. It's a shared responsibility, and together we can find solutions." As she spoke, the tension slowly began to dissipate, replaced by a growing understanding. I could see Kyle standing beside me, his posture easing as he absorbed the weight of Tessa's words. Zion's skin glowed with an array of colors, reflecting hope and determination. "We must all unite for the sake of our world. Let us honor the fallen Lumerian and vow to protect our shared home." The Elysians nodded, some stepping forward to pledge their commitment. I could feel the tide shifting as the darkness of distrust began to recede. As we held a memorial for the fallen Lumerian, I found solace in the newfound respect we were forging. Together, we honored its life, celebrating the beauty and connection we shared. As we stood on the precipice of the unknown, I realized that this final mission was not just about exploring new worlds, but about forging a bond that could withstand the test of time, humanity's greatest gift. The winds howled around us, carrying whispers of the ancient forest that lay below, a place known for its mysterious phenomena and hidden dangers. I felt the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. We were venturing into a realm that had claimed many explorers before us. "Captain Mercer, are you sure about this?" Kyle's voice broke through my thoughts, filled with the lingering tension that had crept into our alliance since we first arrived on Elysium. I turned to face him, the sharp lines of his jaw tense under the dim light of our ship's exterior. "We need to strengthen our bond, Kyle," I replied, trying to sound resolute. "A joint mission into the Shadowed Vale could help us understand each other better. It's a chance to face the unknown together." Kyle's brow furrowed, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "I understand that, but we've faced a lot already. The last time we ventured into a dangerous area, it nearly cost us everything." "I know," I said, feeling the weight of his concern. "But we can't let fear dictate our actions. If we're going to forge a true alliance, we must trust each other." Behind us, Tessa approached, her enthusiasm tempered by the seriousness of the moment. "I think it's a brilliant idea, Alex," she chimed in, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of excitement and determination. "Exploring the Vale together could showcase our strengths and adaptability. We have much to learn from one another." I nodded, grateful for her support. If we can navigate the challenges ahead, it will prove that our differences make us stronger. As we prepared for our descent, I couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would change everything. Our relationship with the Elysians had grown over the months, but old fears lingered just beneath the surface. The Shadowed Vale was notorious for its treacherous terrain and strange occurrences, places where gravity seemed to shift, and shadows danced in the corners of your vision. It was a test not only of our skills, but of our trust in one another. "Ready to face the unknown?" I asked, glancing between my two closest companions. "Let's do this," Kyle replied, determination sparking in his eyes. "Absolutely," Tessa added, her confidence radiating as we boarded the shuttle. The journey down to the Vale was filled with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. As we flew over the dense canopy, I couldn't help but admire the beauty of Elysium. The colors of the trees shifted, their luminescent leaves glowing against the darkening sky. Yet beneath the surface beauty, I could sense the undercurrents of tension that flowed between our team and the Elysians who had chosen to accompany us. Upon landing in a clearing surrounded by towering trees, we disembarked, the soft earth yielding beneath our boots. The air was thick with the scent of rich earth and the distant hum of unseen creatures. A group of Elysians stood at the edge of the clearing, their colorful skin reflecting a spectrum of emotions: excitement, curiosity, and a hint of fear. Zion, our Elysian ally, stepped forward. "We are ready," he declared, his voice firm yet filled with an undertone of uncertainty. "But the Vale is treacherous. We must proceed with caution." "Agreed," I said, trying to match his resolve. "We'll stay together and communicate openly. Trust will be our greatest asset." As we moved deeper into the Vale, the atmosphere shifted. Shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, flickering in and out of existence. The air crackled with energy, and I could feel the weight of ancient secrets pressing down on us. Tessa took the lead, her eyes scanning the foliage for signs of life, while Kyle stayed close, his posture alert. "Watch out for the shifting shadows," Zion warned, his voice a low murmur. "They can deceive the mind." I nodded, remembering stories of explorers who had lost their way, ensnared by illusions. "Stay together," I instructed, feeling the pulse of adrenaline quicken in my veins. As we pressed onward, the landscape became increasingly surreal. Glowing vines twisted around tree trunks, pulsing like veins. I could feel the energy of the place, an ancient force that had witnessed millennia unfold. But with that beauty came an eerie sense of isolation, as if the forest were watching us, gauging our intentions. An hour into our trek, Tessa suddenly stopped, crouching down to examine something in the underbrush. "Look at this," she said, excitement bubbling in her voice. I moved closer, peering over her shoulder. She pointed to a series of footprints embedded in the soft soil. They were large and oddly shaped, unlike anything I had seen before. "Could they belong to a creature indigenous to the Vale?" she mused, her brow furrowing in concentration. "Let's hope it's not something hostile," Kyle replied, crossing his arms, the tension in his posture evident. Suddenly, a rustling sound erupted from the trees, causing us to jump. A moment later, a large creature broke through the underbrush, a majestic, ancient beast resembling a fusion of deer and dragon. Its scales shimmered with vibrant hues, and it had luminous antlers that glowed against the darkness of the forest. I stood frozen, my breath catching in my throat. "What in the universe is that?" I whispered, captivated by the creature's grace. "It's beautiful," Tessa breathed, her eyes wide with awe. She slowly extended a hand, her instincts as a xenobiologist taking over. "I want to try to communicate with it." "Wait, Tessa," I cautioned, stepping closer to her. "We don't know if it's safe." But before I could stop her, she had already approached the creature, her voice gentle and soothing. "It's okay, we mean no harm." To my surprise, the creature paused, its large eyes locking onto hers. There was a moment of tension, a standoff between the two species. Then, slowly, it took a step forward, its nose twitching as it inhaled Tessa's scent. "See?" Tessa exclaimed, her face lighting up with excitement. "It understands." With that, the creature approached, its massive head lowering toward Tessa's outstretched hand. She smiled, brushing her fingers along its snout, and I felt a rush of pride for my friend. In that moment, she was bridging the gap between our worlds. Zion stepped forward, his expression a mix of wonder and concern. "This creature is known as the Aelorith. It is wise and has been revered by my people for generations. But it also holds great power. We must be careful." Tessa nodded, her gaze never leaving the Aelorith. "I can sense its energy. It's protective, not aggressive." The creature nuzzled against her, and I felt a pang of jealousy at the effortless connection they had formed. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was about more than just our personal experiences. It was a journey to solidify our alliance. As we continued on our path, the Aelorith began to lead us deeper into the Vale, moving with an elegance that inspired awe. I kept pace with Kyle, who appeared visibly shaken by the encounter. "What's wrong?" I asked quietly, noticing his clenched fists and furrowed brow. He sighed, his voice low. "I've never been good with trusting anyone. This mission, it's forcing me to confront my fears." "You're not alone in this," I assured him, my tone sincere. "We're all feeling the pressure. But that's what makes this journey valuable. We're learning to lean on each other." Kyle's gaze met mine, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of vulnerability. "I appreciate that, Alex. I just need to figure out how to let my guard down." "Start by trusting Tessa," I suggested. "She's proved her worth countless times. And trust yourself, too. You've got what it takes to lead." As we journeyed through the Vale, the challenges continued to mount. The terrain became more treacherous, with sudden drops and hidden pits, testing our resolve at every turn. Each time a challenge arose, we leaned on one another, blending human adaptability with Elysian wisdom. At one point, we encountered a chasm that stretched for miles, its depths shrouded in shadow. My heart raced as I scanned the landscape, searching for a way across. "This isn't safe," Kyle said, his voice tight with concern. "We need to find a way around." But Tessa, her spirit unwavering, stepped forward. "If we work together, we can build a bridge. The Elysians have technology that can assist us." Zion nodded, his eyes gleaming with understanding. "We can create a path using the local materials. We must believe in our ability to work together." With Tessa leading the charge, we gathered fallen branches and vines, forming a makeshift bridge. Kyle, though still hesitant, stepped up to help, following Tessa's directions. As we labored side by side, I saw a shift in Kyle. He began to open up, sharing snippets of his past, how he had once feared failure in the field, how he struggled to connect with others. It was a moment of vulnerability that brought us closer, a testament to how far we had come. After hours of collaboration, we completed the bridge, standing on the edge of the chasm with our hearts pounding. "Ready?" Tessa asked, her eyes shining with determination. "Together," I replied, locking eyes with Kyle. As we stepped onto the bridge, I felt the weight of our shared history, our triumphs and failures woven together like threads in a tapestry. The bridge creaked beneath our feet, but we moved as one, trusting each other to carry the weight. Once safely across, a wave of relief washed over us. The veil opened up into a breathtaking glade, bathed in ethereal light. But beneath the beauty, a sense of foreboding lingered. At the center of the glade stood an ancient stone monolith, covered in intricate carvings that pulsed with a mysterious energy. I felt an inexplicable pull toward it, a calling that resonated deep within my soul. "What is that?" Kyle asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zion stepped forward, awe evident on his face. "This is the heart of the Vale. It is said to be a place of unity where the spirits of all beings converge." "Is it safe?" Tessa asked, a hint of hesitation creeping into her voice. "It is both sacred and powerful," Zion replied. "We must approach with respect." As we approached the monolith, a surge of energy washed over us, enveloping us in a warm glow. I could feel the weight of the past pressing in, the sacrifices made by those who had come before us. In that moment, I understood the true meaning of coexistence. The heart of the Vale began to resonate, sending waves of energy through the ground. Ancient creatures began to emerge from the shadows, ethereal beings formed of light and color, moving gracefully among us. They swirled around the monolith, creating a beautiful dance that spoke of unity. "This is what we've been searching for," I whispered, my heart swelling with hope. "A testament to what we can achieve together." The Elysians and I stood shoulder to shoulder, watching in awe as the creatures swirled around us, connecting the essence of our species. It was a visual representation of our alliance, humans and Elysians intertwined, bonded by a shared understanding. In that moment, I knew that we were ready to make our pact a commitment to honor our connection and the creatures that had brought us together. As the energy pulsated, I turned to my team, a surge of determination igniting within me. "We need to formalize our alliance here," I said, my voice steady. "A treaty that recognizes our bond and celebrates the creatures that unite us." Tessa nodded, her expression filled with resolve. "We've grown so much, and this moment represents everything we've accomplished together." Kyle looked between us, his eyes shining with newfound conviction. "I'm in. Let's make it official." Zion stepped forward, a look of pride on his face. "As the representative of my people, I accept this proposal. Together, we will create a bond that transcends our differences." With that, we joined hands, forming a circle around the heart of the Vale. The ancient energy surged around us, intertwining our essences, binding us in a sacred promise. In that moment, I felt the weight of history and hoped the culmination of our journey etched into the fabric of existence. As we stepped back, the creatures swirled around us, creating a mesmerizing dance that celebrated our newfound alliance. The air hummed with energy, resonating with the beauty of our connection. Hours passed as we celebrated, sharing stories and laughter under the luminous canopy of the Vale. I could see the changes in my friend Kyle's newfound understanding of trust, Tessa's blossoming confidence as a leader. We had forged something extraordinary. Eventually, As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, I stood with Tessa and Kyle, gazing at the heart of the vale. "This is just the beginning," I said, my heart swelling with hope. "We have much to explore, much to learn." "Together," Tessa echoed, her voice firm. "Together," Kyle repeated, his smile radiant. As we made our way back, I realized how far we had come, not just in terms of our mission, but as individuals. We were no longer just a human crew and an Elysian team. We were a family, bonded by shared experiences and dreams. The final pact we had made wasn't merely a treaty. It was a promise to embrace our differences and celebrate the beauty of coexistence. With our hands joined and our spirits entwined, we walked forward into the future, ready to face whatever challenges awaited us. The meeting room buzzed with tension, words like betrayal and sabotage flying across the table. But the true enemy was lurking in the shadows, ready to exploit our discord. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us. Every glance exchanged a mixture of fear and anger. The walls of the sleek, modern conference chamber on Elysium felt more like a cage than a sanctuary as I sat across from the Elysians, their vibrant skin tones shimmering in the overhead lights, reflecting the emotions swirling around us. "Your people are responsible for the disappearances." An Elysian named Kale spat, his voice thick with accusation. His ornate headdress bobbed as he leaned forward, his luminous eyes narrowing into slits. "Kale, we're not here to blame each other," I interjected, trying to maintain control. "We need to focus on finding the source of these disturbances, not point fingers." "But it's your people who are causing the instability," Kale shot back, anger flaring in his tone. "Creatures are disappearing, storms are tearing through the landscape, and energy readings are spiking. How can we trust you when these problems arose shortly after your arrival?" I glanced at Tessa, who sat beside me, her face a mask of concern and determination. She was the bridge between our worlds, her experience in Elysian biology and culture invaluable in moments like this. Our gazes met, and I could see the unspoken question in her eyes. How do we defuse this situation before it escalates? "Kale," I began, attempting to sound calm despite the tumult within. "We're just as concerned as you are. We didn't come here to disrupt your world. We want to understand what's happening so we can work together to resolve it." But the room remained charged with hostility. I could see the other Elysians shifting uneasily, glancing at each other, their expressions reflecting doubts that threatened to spiral into panic. It was an all too familiar dance of mistrust that I hoped we had left behind with our peace treaty. "Enough." Tessa's voice cut through the noise like a blade. She stood up, her posture firm. "Pointing fingers will not solve anything. We need to investigate these phenomena together. If there are rogue factions involved, we'll find them. But we have to stand united." The tension in the room began to shift, if only slightly, as the Elysians processed Tessa's words. She had a way of calming the storm with her intelligence and grace. I watched as Kale's features softened, though the flicker of distrust still danced in his eyes. "Very well," he said, crossing his arms defiantly. "But if you truly wish to help, you must come to the southern territories where the disturbances have been most frequent. The data we've collected shows a pattern, but we suspect sabotage is involved." "Then let's go," I replied, rising to my feet. "We need to see this for ourselves." The southern territories stretched out before us, a breathtaking expanse of lush greenery and vibrant flora. But beneath its beauty lay the scars of the recent turmoil. As our small shuttle glided through the air, I could see the faint traces of destruction, a swath of land where the trees had been uprooted, animals scattered in the distance, and ominous clouds swirling above. "Storms shouldn't form this quickly here," Tessa said, her brow furrowed as she analyzed the data on her handheld device. "The atmospheric conditions are all wrong." "Just like the disappearances," I added, glancing out at the jagged landscape. "We're not just dealing with natural phenomena. Something's triggering these events." When we landed, the atmosphere shifted again. Several Elysians awaited us, their body language tight, eyes darting nervously. Kale met us at the landing platform, his expression grave. "Thank you for coming," he said, gesturing toward a nearby glade. This is where the latest surge was recorded. We followed him into the clearing, the air heavy with tension. Tessa began to take readings with her equipment, her focus unwavering, while I engaged in conversation with the Elysians, trying to ease their fears. As the readings came in, Tessa frowned. "The energy levels are off the charts," she said. "It's like something is drawing power from the environment itself." "Or it's being drained," Cale suggested, his voice low. Before I could respond, the ground shook beneath us, a low rumble echoing through the trees. Panic flickered across the faces of the Elysians, and I instinctively reached for my sidearm, adrenaline surging. "What was that?" one of the Elysians gasped. "I don't know," I replied, scanning the area. "But we need to find cover." Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the treetops, illuminating the darkening sky. I squinted against the light, and when it faded, I saw something that sent a chill racing down my spine. A massive creature, larger than any I had seen on Elysium, emerged from the shadows, its body wreathed in crackling energy. "What the hell is that?" I muttered. "It's a guardian," Cale whispered, backing away. "But it shouldn't be here. Not like this." The guardian roared, its voice reverberating through the air, sending smaller creatures fleeing in terror. I could feel Tessa's hand on my arm, her fear palpable as we watched the creature thrash wildly, energy surging from its body. "We have to do something," she shouted over the creature's roar. "Let's see if we can calm it," I suggested, recalling our experiences with the Lumerians. "Maybe it's reacting to the disturbances." "Are you insane?" Cale exclaimed, his voice a mix of horror and disbelief. "That creature is not a pet, Mercer." "I know that," I shot back. "But if we don't try, it could destroy everything." Tessa nodded, her determination sparking a fire within me. "We can't just stand by and let it rampage. I have an idea." "Let's hear it," I replied, keeping my eyes on the guardian. "If it's drawing energy from the environment, we need to redirect that energy," she said. "If we can harness the power from the readings, we might be able to calm it down." Cale hesitated, glancing between us and the creature. "It's a risky plan," he warned, "but we might not have a choice." With urgency fueling our movements, we set up Tessa's equipment, aiming to siphon energy from the surrounding area and channel it toward the guardian. As we worked, I could feel the air crackle with tension, and the guardian's growls grew louder, more agitated. "Get ready," I shouted as the guardian lunged, its massive body tearing through the trees toward us. With a final flick of a switch, Tessa activated the device, sending a wave of energy toward the creature. It paused mid-stride, its glowing eyes narrowing as the energy enveloped it. "It's working," Tessa shouted, excitement mingling with fear. "Keep it steady." The guardian hesitated, its growls subsiding as it swayed under the energy's influence. I felt a glimmer of hope, but knew it was fleeting. The creature was still enormous, its power palpable and wild. "Alex, now," Tessa urged, and I seized the moment. I took a few cautious steps forward, my heart racing. "Easy now," I called out, my voice steady despite the chaos. "We mean you no harm." The guardian's gaze flickered toward me, confusion evident in its massive eyes. I held my breath, praying that our gamble would pay off. "Calm, guardian," I repeated, extending my hand in a gesture of peace. "We're here to help." To my surprise, the creature stopped, its breathing slowing as it seemed to process my words. The crackling energy around it diminished, a faint glow surrounding its form. "It's working," Tessa exclaimed, her voice filled with awe. But just as hope surged within me, I heard a sharp sound, a crack, like breaking glass. I turned, and my stomach dropped as I saw a group of armed humans emerge from the trees, their weapons raised and aimed at us. "Step away from the creature," one of them shouted, a smirk dancing across his lips. "You're in over your heads, spacefarers." "What do you want?" I demanded, my grip tightening around my weapon. The lead mercenary stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with malice. "We want what it has, the energy, and you're in our way." Tessa's eyes widened, and she took a step back. "They're not here to help," she murmured. No, they're here to exploit, I replied, my mind racing. We have to protect the Guardian and the Elysians. Your precious treaty means nothing here, the mercenary continued, gesturing to his comrades. You're outnumbered, and that creature is just a tool to us. Stand down, or we'll take it by force. A cold anger washed over me as I glanced at Tessa and Kale. This was the moment where everything would either come together or fall apart. We had to act. Kale, can you distract them? I whispered urgently. He nodded, a fierce determination in his eyes. I'll do my best. Then let's do this, I shouted, raising my weapon and turning to face the mercenaries. Get ready. With a fierce battle cry, Kale darted toward the mercenaries, drawing their fire as Tessa and I flanked the Guardian, hoping to keep it safe from their assault. The Guardian, still agitated, began to shift, sensing the chaos around it. Calm it down, I yelled at Tessa. It's going to go wild again. I'm trying, she shouted back, adjusting the device. Hold it steady. Bullets flew, striking the trees and sending splinters flying. I felt a rush of adrenaline surge through me as I fired back at the mercenaries, each shot calculated, focused. But they were well trained, moving with precision, and our small group was at a disadvantage. Get down, Tessa yelled as a mercenary fired in our direction, and I ducked just in time, feeling the heat of the bullet pass overhead. Kale's distraction was paying off, but not without cost. He was cornered, outnumbered, and the mercenaries were advancing, pushing him back. Kale, fall back, I shouted, but my voice was drowned out by the chaos. The Guardian roared, sensing the growing threat, and suddenly surged forward, breaking through the trees toward the mercenaries. The ground trembled beneath its weight, and the mercenaries stumbled back, shock etched across their faces. Now's our chance, Tessa yelled, her voice breaking through the noise. Redirect the energy again. I moved quickly, taking position beside her as we channeled the energy toward the Guardian, the device humming with power. The creature paused, its massive head tilting toward us, then focused its energy on the advancing mercenaries. Together, I shouted, pouring all my focus into the Guardian. Let's show them we mean business. With a brilliant flash, the Guardian unleashed a wave of energy that surged outward, knocking the mercenaries off their feet and sending them crashing into the trees. The forest erupted in chaos, the air charged with power as the Guardian roared again, a sound that echoed with authority. Keep it up, Tessa, I urged, my voice rising above the din. Tessa's face was etched with concentration, her fingers flying over the device. I can't hold it for long, she shouted back. Just a little longer, I urged, firing at the mercenaries who were scrambling to regain their footing. We need to drive them back. The Guardian took a step forward, the ground vibrating under its weight. Another blast of energy surged from its body, hitting the mercenaries and forcing them to retreat further. Fall back, their leader shouted, scrambling to his feet. We can't handle this. As they turned to flee, I felt a surge of triumph, but it was quickly replaced by concern for Kale. He was still engaged in battle, and I couldn't leave him behind. Stay here, I called to Tessa, sprinting toward Kale. Alex, wait, she shouted, but I was already moving, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had to help him. I arrived just in time to see Kale grappling with one of the mercenaries, their struggle fierce and desperate. I leveled my weapon, the chaos of the moment narrowing my focus, and squeezed the trigger. The mercenary fell, and Kale took the opportunity to break free. Let's go, I shouted, grabbing Kale's arm. We need to regroup. As we dashed back toward Tessa, the Guardian continued to hold the mercenaries at bay, its energy radiating like a shield. Tessa was frantically adjusting her device, her expression a mix of fear and determination. It's not going to hold them for long, she yelled, her eyes darting to the fleeing mercenaries. We have to cut them off. I nodded, formulating a plan. If we can create a barrier, we might contain them long enough to send them packing for good. Kale caught his breath, glancing between Tessa and me. What do you need me to do? Help us channel the Guardian's energy, I instructed. If we can amplify it, we might be able to send a shockwave that will stop them in their tracks. Let's do it, Kale replied, the fire of determination igniting in his eyes. We moved as one, rushing back toward the Guardian, the massive creature now firmly in control of its powers. The mercenaries were regrouping, forming a line, their weapons aimed and ready. On my count, I shouted, positioning myself in front of the Guardian. 3, 2, 1. As I called out, Tessa activated the device, sending a surge of energy from the Guardian toward the mercenaries. The ground shook, and I could feel the raw power coursing through me as Kale and I joined forces, pouring our energy into the flow. With a deafening roar, the Guardian unleashed a massive shockwave, sending a pulse of energy cascading through the air. The mercenaries were thrown backward, their formations crumbling as they fell to the ground. Now, I shouted, and we pressed our advantage, firing at the mercenaries as they struggled to regain their footing. The fight was fierce, but our resolve had solidified. We wouldn't let them exploit Elysium or threaten our hard-won peace. As the last of the mercenaries fled into the trees, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. We had succeeded, at least for now. Is everyone okay? I asked, panting heavily. Kale nodded, his face flushed with adrenaline. We did it. Tessa turned to us, her expression a mix of pride and exhaustion. But we can't let our guard down. They'll be back, and they'll come prepared. We'll be ready, I promised, looking at my team with newfound resolve. We'll uncover the truth behind these disturbances, and we'll make sure this doesn't happen again. Later that night, as the stars sparkled in the clear Elysian sky, I found myself sitting on a log outside our makeshift camp, the events of the day swirling through my mind. Tessa joined me, her presence a comforting reminder of our shared mission. Do you think we'll find out what's really going on? She asked, her voice soft yet steady. I sighed, staring into the flickering flames of our campfire. I hope so. There's something deeper at play here, something that wants to tear us apart. She nodded, gazing into the fire. We have to stay united, Alex. The moment we lose trust in each other, we lose everything. Her words resonated with me, a truth that echoed through the challenges we faced. I won't let that happen, I promised. We've come too far to let fear dictate our actions. Tessa smiled, her eyes reflecting the light of the fire. Together, we can face anything. And in that moment, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead would be fraught with danger, but as long as we stood together, we could uncover the truth and protect the fragile peace we had fought so hard to achieve. As the ground shook beneath our feet and the sky darkened with storm clouds, I understood that Elysium was not just a planet. It was a living entity, and it was angry. The tremors rippled through the settlement, sending shockwaves of panic through the Elysian crowd that had gathered for the festival. In the aftermath of our battle against the mercenaries, the atmosphere had shifted. Tensions that had been simmering now boiled over, and the weight of our recent confrontation hung heavily in the air. Tessa stood beside me, her eyes wide with concern as she looked toward the horizon. Alex, what's happening? Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the fear we both felt. I don't know, I admitted, my heart racing. But we need to find out before it's too late. I scanned the crowd, my gaze landing on Kyle, who was already moving toward the edge of the settlement. He was a solid presence, a rock in the chaos, his determination unwavering. The last battle had changed him. He had stepped up in ways I never expected. Now, as he rushed to help the Elysians, I felt a surge of pride. We were in this together. The ground quaked again, and I could hear distant roars that reverberated through the trees. We should reach the elders, I said, urgency creeping into my voice. They might know what's causing this. Tessa nodded, her expression resolute. Let's go. As we raced through the settlement, the air thickened with an electric charge. The elders' chamber was at the heart of Elysium, a grand structure woven from living trees and luminous vines. I pushed open the door, and we entered, breathless. The elders, cloaked in their traditional garments, were gathered in a tight circle, their expressions grave. Elder Lysara, The oldest among them looked up. "You've returned," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos outside. "But it seems the storms have not ceased." "Storms?" I echoed. "This is more than just weather. Something has awakened." "The disturbance you caused during the battle," she began, her brow furrowing. "It has roused an ancient creature, a guardian of the land, believed to be a myth. We call it the Vortigern." Tessa stepped forward. "The Vortigern? What does it want?" Elder Lysara hesitated, her eyes flickering with concern. "It possesses immense power capable of destruction or salvation. Its awakening is tied to the energy of Elysium. If it feels threatened, it will lash out." "What do we need to do?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "We must calm it," Lysara replied. "To do so, we need to understand its nature. Seek the old text in the temple. They hold the knowledge of our ancestors, the key to connecting with the Vortigern." With a nod from Tessa, we set off toward the temple, a towering structure adorned with intricate carvings depicting the creatures of Elysium. As we entered the temple, the air was thick with incense and history. Dimly lit candles flickered, casting shadows that danced across the stone walls. Rows of ancient texts lay on pedestals, each scroll a fragment of the past. Tessa moved quickly, her fingers gliding over the dusty parchments. "Here," she exclaimed, pulling a scroll from the shelf. "This talks about the Vortigern and its connection to Elysium's energy." I leaned in closer as Tessa read aloud, her voice steady. "The Vortigern is a protector of balance, awakening when the harmony of the land is disturbed. Its power can be harnessed for good, but if angered, it will bring destruction." "Do we have any idea how to calm it?" I wondered aloud. "It says here," Tessa continued, "that we need to create a bond with the creature, show it we mean no harm, and that we respect its power. We must find a way to connect with it through the natural energy of the planet." "Where do we even start?" I asked. "By showing our willingness to unite," Tessa replied. "We need to gather the Elysians and the humans who have come to Elysium. We must demonstrate that we're stronger together." Just then, a deafening roar echoed outside, shaking the temple walls. Tessa and I exchanged worried glances. "We don't have much time," I said. "Let's gather everyone. We need to move quickly." As we stepped back into the open air, the storm intensified. The sky was a swirling mass of dark clouds, and the winds howled like a wounded animal. I could feel the pulse of energy in the air, a manifestation of the chaos the Vortigern brought with its awakening. "Kyle," I shouted, spotting him among a group of Elysians. He was speaking to a few warriors, rallying them to protect the settlement. "We need to gather everyone," I urged, breathless from running. "The Vortigern is awake, and we need to show it we are united." Kyle's eyes widened. "United? Are you sure that's the best plan? What if it doesn't listen?" "We have to try," Tessa interjected. "If we don't, we risk everything. The only way to calm it is to demonstrate our solidarity." Kyle nodded, determination setting in. "All right, I'll gather the troops. We need to show the Elysians that we're here to help." As Kyle dispersed to mobilize the warriors, Tessa and I moved through the settlement, calling out to anyone who would listen. "Everyone, we need you," I shouted, my voice carrying over the howling wind. "The Vortigern is awakening, and we must stand together to calm it." The fear in the eyes of the Elysians was palpable, but as more of them gathered, I saw the spark of hope igniting. Elder Lysara joined us, her eyes filled with tears of joy. "You have done it. You have awakened the Vortigern not as a beast of chaos, but as a guardian of our world." Kyle grinned, exhilaration radiating from him. "We really did it, together." Tessa turned to me, her expression softening. "You led us through this, Alex. You showed us that unity is our greatest strength." I felt the weight of her words, realizing how far we had come. "We couldn't have done it without each other," I replied. "This was a team effort." The Vortigern watched us, its massive form shimmering in the sunlight, a reminder of the bond we had forged with this land. I stepped forward, feeling compelled to connect with it one last time. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. "We honor you and the balance of Elysium. We will protect this land together." The creature lowered its head, and I reached out to touch its scales. A rush of energy flowed through me, a silent understanding passing between us. The Vortigern had accepted us as allies, and I knew that our journey was far from over. As the sun set over Elysium, casting long shadows and brilliant hues across the sky, I felt a sense of hope blooming within me. We had faced the storm and emerged united, stronger than ever. And together, we would continue to protect our home. Days passed as we began to rebuild, the scars of our battle slowly healing. The bond between humans and Elysians grew deeper, strengthened by the shared experience of confronting the Vortigern. Kyle had become a true leader among the Elysians, earning their respect and trust as he worked alongside them to fortify the settlement. Tessa's connection with her Elysian friend deepened, revealing the beauty of our cultures intertwined. But even as we celebrated our victory, I knew we had merely scratched the surface of Elysium's mysteries. The energy of the land pulsed beneath us, a reminder of the ancient forces that lay dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken again. The stakes had never been higher, and as I stood before my team, I knew that failure was not an option. We were fighting not just for our lives, but for the very soul of Elysium. The dim light of the war room flickered over our faces, casting long shadows that seemed to mirror the fears lurking in our hearts. I stood at the head of the table, surrounded by the familiar faces of my crew and our Elysian allies, each person embodying a unique blend of determination and anxiety. Kyle leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his jaw set in a hard line. Tessa sat at the table, her fingers drumming nervously against the surface, a clear sign of the pressure we were all feeling. "All right, everyone," I began, trying to inject confidence into my voice. "We've managed to subdue the creature, but that was only the first step. The rogue faction won't sit idly by after what happened. We need a plan." The council chamber was a far cry from the vibrant forest and sprawling landscapes of Elysium. The walls were adorned with the history of Elysians, but right now they felt like they were closing in on us. We had dealt with our share of challenges, but this was different. The recent battles had drawn lines between us that seemed to deepen with every moment of hesitation. "The longer we wait, the more dangerous they become," Tessa interjected, her voice steady despite the tension. "They've seen what we can do together, and they're likely preparing to strike first." Kyle nodded, stepping forward. "If they're planning something big, we need to gather intelligence on their movements. I can lead a small team to scout their base and see what they're up to." I looked at him, weighing the urgency of his words against the risk involved. "It's a good idea, but we need to be cautious, if they know we're coming." "I'm not afraid of a fight," Kyle cut in, a fire igniting in his eyes. "They underestimate us. If we can catch them off guard, we can turn the tide before it even starts." The room fell silent as everyone considered his words. I could see the determination flicker in their eyes, but doubt still lingered beneath the surface. I felt it too. The weight of responsibility hung heavy on my shoulders. We had made promises to protect this planet, to bridge the gap between our peoples, and the thought of failing that commitment was unbearable. "We'll need all the intelligence we can gather," I finally said, meeting Kyle's fierce gaze. "All right, let's split into two groups. Kyle, you'll lead the scouting mission. Tessa and I will work on fortifying our defenses here. We can't let them catch us off guard." Kyle nodded, and I could see the sense of purpose revitalizing him. As he prepared to leave, I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Remember, trust your instincts. We're in this together." With that, Kyle gathered a small team of Elysians, their expressions a mix of concern and camaraderie. As they departed, I turned to Tessa, who was already analyzing the maps spread across the table. "Any thoughts on their possible strategies?" I asked, hoping she'd have insights that could guide our preparations. "I suspect they'll try to exploit our weaknesses," she replied, tracing her finger over the map. "They know our strengths now, and they'll aim for a surprise attack. If we can anticipate their moves, we might be able to counter them effectively." The gravity of her words hung in the air. I knew we couldn't afford to be reckless. The stakes were too high. As we continued our discussions, I could feel the weight of the impending battle pressing down on us, a storm brewing just beyond our walls. The next few hours were a blur of preparation. We fortified our defenses, reinforcing barricades and strategizing the layout of our forces. The atmosphere was charged with an electric tension, each person driven by a shared purpose, but I could also sense the cracks forming under the pressure. Old wounds were surfacing, doubts lingering like uninvited guests at a feast. As night fell, the war room grew quieter. The maps and blueprints took on a somber quality under the dim lights. I gathered everyone once more. Listen, I know this isn't easy. We're facing not just an enemy, but the ghosts of our past. Each of us has scars that have shaped who we are today. It's those very experiences that can either divide us or strengthen our resolve. We need to trust each other more than ever. Kyle shifted uneasily, his expression betraying a mix of determination and doubt. I've fought many battles, but this feels different. What if we fail? What if? Failure is not an option, I interrupted, my voice sharper than intended. We've come too far to let fear dictate our choices. We're stronger together. You've proven that time and again. Kyle, remember the creature we faced? We subdued it not just through strength, but through unity. Tessa stepped in, her presence calming the rising tension. We've fought side by side, faced adversity, and learned from each other. That's our greatest weapon. The rogue faction may think they can divide us, but they don't understand our bond. Kyle met Tessa's gaze, and I could see the flicker of doubt beginning to fade. You're right. I just don't want to let anyone down again. We won't let that happen, I assured him. This is our moment. We fight not just for ourselves, but for Elysium. For its creatures, for the legacy we want to leave behind. As dawn broke over Elysium, the atmosphere was charged with an unspoken promise. We gathered our forces, Elysians and humans alike, ready to face the storm. The sun cast a golden hue over the landscape, a stark contrast to the tension building in our hearts. The plan was set. Kyle's scouting team had returned with crucial information about the rogue faction's movements. They were amassing forces at an old, abandoned outpost near the northern mountains, a strategic position overlooking the valley. It's heavily fortified, Kyle explained, gesturing at the map spread across the table. They have sentries and defenses in place, but we've spotted a weak point on the east side. If we move at dawn, we can catch them off guard. I nodded, feeling the weight of leadership pressing down on me. Then we go in hard and fast. Our goal is to disrupt their plans and neutralize their leadership. We can't afford to let them regroup. Tessa stepped forward, her eyes alight with determination. I can work on creating distractions using the wildlife around the area. If we can draw their attention away from our main approach, we'll have the element of surprise. Good thinking, I replied, feeling a surge of pride in her growth. Let's prepare. As we geared up, I could sense the nervous energy rippling through the group. Kyle checked his equipment, the weight of responsibility evident in his posture. I approached him, wanting to provide reassurance. Remember, we're in this together. No matter what happens, trust your instincts. He met my gaze, a mix of gratitude and determination in his eyes. I won't let you down, Alex. With the first light of dawn illuminating the path ahead, we set off toward the rogue faction's stronghold. The air was crisp, filled with a sense of the forest, and as we moved closer to the outpost, the tension grew. My heart raced, not just from anticipation, but from the weight of what lay ahead. As we approached the designated location, Tessa signaled for silence. The eerie stillness of the surroundings amplified the sound of our breaths, each exhale a reminder of the gravity of our mission. Everyone, positions, I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. We fanned out, blending with the shadows of the trees, and I felt the adrenaline coursing through my veins. We were on the cusp of something monumental, a confrontation that could either save or doom our alliance. Tessa moved ahead, her connection with the wildlife palpable as she began her plan. A series of rustling sounds echoed through the trees, followed by distant animal calls that echoed through the valley. The rogue faction's sentries shifted uneasily, their attention drawn away from our true approach. "Now," I urged, and we moved as one, a seamless blend of human and Elysian forces pushing toward the eastern flank. As we reached the edge of the clearing, chaos erupted. Our first assault took the sentries by surprise, and the rogue faction was thrown into disarray. Kyle led the charge, a fierce determination burning in his eyes as he engaged the enemy head-on. "Cover me," he shouted, diving behind cover as blaster fire erupted around us. I followed closely, adrenaline pumping, the thrill of battle igniting a fire within me. Tessa flanked us, her instincts guiding her as she coordinated our movements. To the left, they're regrouping. I felt the rush of combat as I fired my weapon, each shot finding its mark. We moved fluidly, a well-rehearsed dance of destruction and purpose. But in the chaos, I noticed something that sent a chill down my spine. The rogue faction was not merely defending. They were preparing for a counterattack. As I ducked behind a rock, I spotted a familiar figure among the chaos, one I had hoped not to see again. A rogue Elysian leader, his face twisted in rage, was rallying the troops. "They think they can take our home? We will show them the true power of Elysium," he roared, his voice cutting through the din of battle like a knife. A surge of anger welled up within me as I recognized him, Cirrus, the very figure who had spearheaded the movement against our alliance. His presence was a stark reminder that this confrontation was not just about survival, it was personal. "Alex," Tessa shouted, pulling my attention back to the battle. "We need to push forward. We can't let them regroup." I nodded, determination settling into my bones. "All right, on my mark. We advance on 3. 1, 2, 3. We charged forward, a wave of humanity and Elysian warriors crashing against the rogue faction's defenses. The ground shook as we engaged, the chaos of combat filling the air with adrenaline and the sounds of conflict. My heart raced, a mixture of fear and exhilaration as I fought alongside my friends. The rogue Elysians fought fiercely, but our teamwork began to turn the tide. Kyle was a force of nature, charging through the enemy lines, his combat training evident in every movement. He moved with a purpose, rallying our forces and cutting down anyone who stood in our way. "Push them back," he shouted, urging the others forward. "We can't let them take our home." As I moved to support him, I felt a sudden impact at my side, knocking me to the ground. Pain shot through my ribs as I gasped for breath, looking up to see one of the rogue faction members looming over me, weapon raised. "Your alliance will be your downfall," he sneered, preparing to strike. In that instant, Tessa's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Get down." She leapt into action, using a nearby branch to knock the rogue off balance, allowing me to roll away and regain my footing. "Are you okay?" she asked, concern etched in her features. "I'm fine," I replied, shaking off the shock. "We need to focus on Cirrus. He's the one rallying them." We rejoined Kyle, who was rallying the troops with fervor. "This way, we can flank them." He was a whirlwind of energy, driving our forces forward. But as we pressed deeper into the fray, I felt a sudden shift in the tide. The rogue faction, initially disorganized, began to regroup, their leadership bolstered by Cirrus's unyielding presence. The chaos morphed into a focused counterattack, and I watched in horror as our allies struggled against the renewed onslaught. Tessa grabbed my arm, pulling me toward a small group of Elysians trying to hold the line. "We can't let them break through. We need to help." "Right," I responded, steeling myself as we pushed through the fray. I could see Kyle a few paces ahead, coordinating a defensive position with fierce intensity, but the chaos was thick, and our movements felt disjointed. We fought our way to the heart of the conflict, where the most intense fighting was occurring. The once vibrant clearing had turned into a battlefield, filled with smoke and chaos. I could hear the shouts of soldiers and the crack of weapons discharging, the scent of burned earth and fear hanging in the air. Cirrus stood defiantly at the center, rallying his followers. "They think they can take our home, but Elysium is ours. We will drive them out." My heart pounded in my chest as I glanced at Tessa and Kyle, who were both keeping a close eye on the rogue leader. We have to take him down. He's the key to breaking their spirit, I said, my voice resolute. On my signal, Kyle replied, his gaze steady. We'll move in together. But before we could execute our plan, a sudden explosion erupted nearby, sending debris flying and knocking us off balance. I shielded my face from the dust and chaos, coughing as I regained my footing. We have to move, Tessa shouted, pointing toward a narrow path that led around the side of the clearing. Follow me, Kyle called, charging forward. I and Tessa followed closely behind, dodging enemy fire and the wreckage from the explosion. We maneuvered through the chaos, our minds focused on the task at hand. As we approached Cirrus, I could see his expression hardening as he recognized the three of us advancing. Ah, the little alliance, he taunted, a malicious grin spreading across his face. You truly believe you can take Elysium from us? You're just pawns in a game far larger than you understand. Enough talk, Cirrus, I replied, stepping forward with purpose. This ends now. Does it? He laughed, a cruel sound that echoed through the clearing. You have no idea what's coming. You're too late to stop it. Before I could respond, Cirrus raised his hand, and suddenly a deafening roar filled the air. From the shadows of the forest emerged a monstrous creature, unlike anything I had ever seen, an ancient being, scales glimmering like molten metal, with a wingspan that cast an imposing shadow over the battlefield. Behold, Cirrus proclaimed, triumph radiating from him. The true power of Elysium, it will lay waste to your alliance. Tessa gasped, her eyes wide with fear. What is that thing? Something I thought was long gone, I replied, my heart racing. It's a guardian of this land, and it looks like Cirrus has awakened it to fight for him. The creature landed with a thunderous crash, sending ripples of panic through our ranks. Its eyes glowed with a fierce intelligence, scanning the battlefield as it let out another bone-chilling roar, echoing our fears into the depths of the forest. Everyone, fall back, I shouted, trying to rally our forces. We need to regroup and come up with a plan. But the creature had other ideas. It charged toward our group, its massive jaws snapping dangerously close as we scattered in different directions. I ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding its snap, my mind racing with possibilities. We can't let it get to the others, Tessa yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. We need to find a way to communicate with it. Kyle nodded, determination blazing in his eyes. Then we distract it while Tessa figures it out. We have to do this now. As the creature continued its rampage, I turned to Tessa. Can you reach it? I'll try, she replied, sprinting toward a nearby rock formation for cover. Just keep it distracted. All right, let's go, I shouted to Kyle, and together we charged toward the creature, dodging its swipes and attempting to draw its attention away from Tessa. Over here, Kyle yelled, firing at the ground near the creature's feet, trying to distract it. Come on, ugly. The ancient creature turned its massive head, roaring in anger as it focused on us. My heart raced as I exchanged glances with Kyle, silently communicating our plan. Now, I shouted, and we both dove to the side as the creature lunged at us, narrowly missing. We rolled away, regrouping behind a boulder, panting heavily. Tessa, I called out, trying to keep my eyes on the creature. Are you ready? I think so, she replied, her voice barely audible above the chaos. I need a moment to connect with it. Just then, the creature paused, its eyes narrowing as it seemed to sense Tessa's presence. Come on, Tessa, we don't have much time, Kyle urged. Tessa stepped out from behind her cover, her arms raised in a calming gesture. Please, I can help you, she shouted, her voice steady even as the ground shook beneath us. We're not your enemies. The creature hesitated, its massive form towering over us, confusion flickering in its eyes. Tessa took a deep breath, her connection with the Elysian wildlife shining through. You're not a weapon. You're a protector. In that moment, I felt the air shift as the creature seemed to pause, its massive chest heaving. The chaos of the battle faded into the background, leaving only Tessa's voice and the creature's uncertain roar. "Trust me," Tessa continued, stepping closer despite the danger. "You're stronger than this. We can fight for Elysium together." Cirrus, realizing what was happening, shouted in fury. "No, don't listen to her. She's lying." But the creature's gaze softened, and I felt a wave of hope wash over me. "Tessa, keep going," I urged, feeling the tension in my chest ease as the creature's aggression began to wane. "I know you feel it. Elysium is in danger, but it's not from us. Together, we can protect this land." Tessa's voice was strong, unwavering. The creature roared again, but this time it was not a sound of anger. It was a call, a cry that resonated deep within the very earth of Elysium. As it turned its gaze towards Cirrus, I could see the change, the awakening of something powerful, a bond forming between Tessa and the creature. With a final, defiant roar, the ancient creature charged towards Cirrus, who was desperately trying to rally his remaining followers. "No, you can't betray me," he shouted, panic seeping into his voice. As we gathered to celebrate the dawn of a new era, I could feel the pulse of change in the air, a promise of hope, adventure, and a future where we would stand together, stronger than ever. After the final battle, the silence felt heavier than any noise of combat ever had. The dust had settled, and the aftermath was raw and honest. Elysians and humans moved among the remains of the battleground, tending to injuries, retrieving the fallen, and supporting one another as the burden of survival wore on their shoulders. Though we had won, we weren't left unscarred. Fractured trust, simmering fears, and unresolved tensions had a way of clinging like shadows. Tessa was at my side as we surveyed the remnants of the conflict. Her usual calm gaze was hardened now with a quiet strength, the kind that could survive even the worst storms. Kyle was further off, crouched beside a group of Elysians, speaking softly to them. He had been more withdrawn lately, understandably so, given the impact of everything we'd gone through. He'd been leading with a tenacity I hadn't seen before, and, despite his own wounds, he was giving back to those around him. The Elysians gathered near the center of the damaged settlement, their hallowed meeting grounds where the ancient trees grew tall and sacred fires had burned for generations. Today, however, the fires smoldered only in pockets, a visible reminder of all that had been lost and all we had fought for. It was here that Tessa and I planned to initiate the conversation of peace. With the tense quiet broken only by murmurs and the rustle of the wind, I began. "Today, we stand on a precipice. The bloodshed, the broken promises, they've brought us here. But what we have ahead, what we can make out of this pain, is ours to decide." The Elysians listened intently, their silent gazes unwavering, their patience like that of trees, rooted and enduring. I continued, choosing my words with care. "Humans and Elysians are different. We approach the world in ways that sometimes feel incompatible. But today, as we gather here, I ask that we look not at the differences, but at the things that brought us together. The loyalty, the bravery, and the understanding we've shared through both conflict and peace." My words met silence, and for a moment, I worried they'd fall flat. Tessa took a step forward, her voice softer, with a warmth that seemed to reach those in the crowd. "I've spent time learning from all of you," she said, her gaze meeting those of the Elysians' elders who stood to the side. "And in that time, I learned that though we can be strangers in many ways, we're tied by what we love. For Elysians, it's this world and the creatures that roam it. For us, it's much the same. Together, we can protect and grow, building a legacy of trust." Elder Senera, the eldest of the Elysians, stepped forward, her eyes like molten amber, penetrating but kind. "The path to peace is never easy," she replied, her voice low, reverberating through the clearing. "It's built on understanding, on knowing where the other stands even when it seems impossible. But," she added, a faint smile touching her lips, "for the first time, I believe we can walk that path together." The meeting adjourned with nods of agreement. The elders stepped aside to finalize the details, and I turned to Kyle, watching him rise from his crouch, sharing a glance with Tessa as they prepared to formalize their research alliance. Later, as dusk fell, fires once again lit the clearing. Tonight marked the first step toward a shared future, and we gathered beneath the stars to celebrate the alliance that had been born from hardship. Elysians and humans mingled, exchanging stories and gestures of goodwill. We were readying for the next chapter, despite the scars we bore. Kyle approached the gathered Elysians, clearly nervous. He glanced back at me briefly, and I nodded, encouraging him to go ahead. He had been through a transformation, and I knew this was as much his moment as it was mine. He cleared his throat, drawing the attention of both humans and Elysians alike. "I've never been good with words," he began, his voice shaky but determined. "I grew up seeing things in black and white, enemy or ally, danger or safety. For most of my life, I've been taught to expect the worst in people, and when I met you all, I expected trouble." The Elysians watched him carefully, their expressions unreadable. "But," he continued, his voice growing steadier, "being here, with all of you, I learned that trust is a choice, just like fear is. We can choose it, and through that choice, we can learn. Today, I want to thank you all for showing me that my fears weren't as big as I thought they were. That trust can change everything." The Elysians nodded solemnly, but one of the younger members, an Elysian I had often seen speaking with Kyle, stepped forward, offering him a small woven bracelet, a token of their people's trust. Kyle took it, visibly moved, and with that, his transformation felt complete. The ceremony that followed was a blend of Elysian and human customs. We exchanged tokens of culture, art, music, the stories that shaped us. As the night deepened, Elder Senora stood to make an announcement, her voice cutting through the low murmurs. "Tonight, we share not just memories, but a bond. Through this ceremony, we pledge to protect not only each other, but the land and creatures of Elysium. And in this, we invite our new friends, our allies, the humans, to join us in a formal commitment, a vow that transcends words." As if on cue, several Elysians brought forth creatures we had come to know over the past few weeks, the Lemurians, with their massive, gentle frames, the delicate Oralias, and other creatures, each representing a part of Elysium's ecosystem. It was a reminder of what we fought to protect, of the lives that existed beyond our own. I stepped forward to accept the pledge, feeling the weight of my role and responsibility. "We accept this vow," I said, meeting Elder Senora's gaze. "Together, we will protect this world. This isn't just a promise, it's a bond as sacred as life itself." The Elysians murmured their agreement, and as we moved forward to seal the pact, Tessa exchanged a knowing glance with her Elysian friend, Terran, an accomplished scientist who had shared in Tessa's curiosity and dedication. The two of them had forged their own kind of alliance, one that blended their scientific pursuits with a deeper understanding of each other's cultures. Terran approached her, offering a small pendant, a rare mineral found only in Elysian soil. "A token of our friendship," he said, his voice soft. "May it remind you of the discoveries we've yet to make." Tessa accepted it with a smile, slipping it around her neck. "And may it remind you of the worlds we'll explore together," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. As the night wound down, the fires crackling and the soft sounds of Elysian instruments filling the air, I couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. We had faced down every obstacle, physical and emotional, that had threatened to divide us, and now we were stronger than before. We had faced the shadows and emerged with our heads high, and there was a beauty in that kind of unity. But as I turned, something caught my attention. Off in the distance, where the forest grew denser, a strange glow shimmered between the trees. I felt a prickling along my spine, a sense of curiosity mingling with caution. There had been whispers, rumors of an unexplored region, a part of Elysium that even the Elysians dared not tread. "Do you see that?" I murmured, nudging Kyle. He glanced over, his brows furrowing. "Yeah, wonder what it is." Tessa joined us, her gaze narrowing as she took in the faint light. "Could be some kind of natural phenomenon, or something else entirely." I looked over at Elder Senora, who had noticed our exchange. She approached, her expression guarded. "That is the Shrouded Forest," she said softly, "a place that holds secrets as old as Elysium itself. Few dare to go there, for it is said to be guarded by forces we do not fully understand." Her words stirred something within me, a sense of adventure that had been a part of me since my first voyage into the stars. I glanced at Tessa and Kyle, both of whom looked back with a mixture of excitement and determination. "What if we explored it together?" I asked, the words out before I could reconsider. "A joint expedition, to learn more about this world and what it has to offer." Elder Senora was silent for a moment, studying each of us in turn. Finally, she nodded, a slight smile curving her lips. "Perhaps that is what this alliance is for, to uncover what lies beyond our fears." And just like that, a new adventure lay ahead of us, one that promised to take us deeper into the heart of Elysium than we had ever dared venture. It was a journey that would test our new alliance, challenge our newfound unity, and perhaps, if we were lucky, reveal the true mysteries of this world. As we prepared to embark on this new path, I could feel the promise of that future filled with hope, discovery, and the bonds we had forged. This was the dawn of unity, and whatever awaited us in the depths of Elysium, I knew we would face it together.